Hello, we are in 2nd Nephi chapter 18, which is Isaiah 8. Isaiah, it is such a testimony to me that the Book of Mormon includes so many chapters of Isaiah. There are many people that refer to Isaiah as the book of Isaiah as like the Bible within the Bible, because there's 66 chapters and we have 66 chapters in the Bible. And a lot of what he's trying to convey and to teach is all about that relationship with God, which it sort of sums up a lot of the message, which is we are God's children. Although that doesn't, sum up the Bible, but it in short sentences, but it does reflect that relationship that we want to have with our God and our Creator. And so Isaiah is very important to study, especially in this time that we live in, where so much of what he's talking about seems to be almost being repeated in our time, with the division, the corruption of leaders, people not knowing where to turn for truth or light. And Isaiah the prophet, those who have a message from God not being able to get through to anybody. Let's start verse 1. Moreover, the word of the Lord said unto me, take a great roll and write it in it with a man's pen concerning Maher-shalal Hashbaz. So the Lord is saying, get yourself a lot of paper, a great roll, scroll, however you want to put it, something to, the word was Megillah. And that usually refers to a lot, something big, a lot of writing material, and write with the man's pen concerning this Maher-shalal Hashbaz. And Maher-shalal Hashbaz, Maher apparently means quickly. Halal is sort of like the plunder or booty or something like this. Hash again is quickly, and Baz is again the plunder of a victorious war. So in other words, it's saying quickly the spoils of war quickly go to those who will crush you in war. Essentially, you're going to get crushed in war. It's going to happen fast, and there's going to be a lot of plundering going on. You're going to lose everything. So in a nutshell, destruction is imminent for you. And that's the name of his second son, because we know that his first son, Shir Jashub, means a remnant will return. So for people that live in such times where it feels like destruction is imminent or we're on the brink, this chapter really is for you. And this whole chapter is really a formula for how to live in a world that is crumbling around you. In fact, Isaiah gives really powerful images of what that feels like. Verse 2, and I took unto me faithful witnesses to record Uriah the priest and Zechariah the son of Jeberechiah. So he is down to two people, it seems like. He's going to have two people look over what he's going to write down regarding this name, which means that pretty soon we're going to lose a lot. And they're there to kind of go over what he's written. Is it true or not? Am I just making this up, or can you confirm what I'm writing? And the interesting thing is that these two witnesses, Uriah the priest, under King Ahaz went to Damascus to meet with, let's just read 2 Kings chapter 16, verses 10 through 11. So it's not just me talking. And King Ahaz went to Damascus, which is the capital of Syria, sometimes called Aram, to meet with Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, and saw an altar that was at Damascus, and King Ahaz sent to Uriah the priest the fashion of the altar and the pattern of it according to all the workmanship thereof. And he had Uriah whip him up one. Hey, I want one of these idol worshiping altars. Get me one in our temple. And in fact, let's remodel a little bit to accommodate this altar. So, Uriah, you can say, well, gosh, or Uriah must have been a wicked priest. Or you could say, maybe Uriah just wanted to live. Maybe he just didn't see the value in defying the king and dying, and then there would be nobody to replace him. Who knows? It's just really hard to judge and condemn people automatically and say, well, he was a wicked priest. We don't really know what all was happening. We know that he had to respond to, as do most people who have a king, they have to do what the king says. And that was the warning that they had about having a king. And yet they insisted on having a king. And this is what they got. And so this Zechariah, we don't really know an awful lot. Like we said, he's slim pickings here in the kingdom of Judah. But these were the ones that he chose to say, look over this and tell me if this is not right, if this is not what's happening. Verse 3, and I went unto the prophetess, and she conceived and bare a son. Then said the Lord to me, call his name Maher-shalal-Hash-Baz. So this doesn't just mean that a war is coming or that there's going to be plundering going on soon. It means that a war is coming, something is coming, and they're on the losing end. This is not good for them. This isn't like, oh, Maher-shalal-Hash-Baz, we're going to go conquer some people and we're going to get a lot of booty. No. This is going to happen to you. So this is quite the dramatic name. Apparently the longest name in the Bible, if you want to call it a name. Verse 4, for behold, the child shall not have knowledge to cry, my father and my mother, before the riches of Damascus and the spoil of Samaria shall be taken away before the king of Assyria. So this is saying that before this child even has the knowledge to say mom and dad, which is, I'm assuming kids were just as smart then as they are now. Some babies are saying mama and papa, dad pretty early. But apparently there was a little bit more time here before this happened. And again, Damascus is the capital of Syria, or Aram, and Samaria is the capital of the northern kingdom, sometimes called Ephraim, or just Israel. The Lord spake also unto me, saying, for as much as this people refuseth the waters of Shiloah that go softly, and rejoice in Rezin and Remaliah's son, now therefore, verse 7, the Lord bringeth up upon them the waters of the river, strong and many, even the king of Assyria and all his glory, and he shall come up over all his channels and go over all his banks. So this pool Siloam or Shiloah, it's in Jerusalem, and it means sending. And apparently the waters were, pretty soft. But he's saying, yeah, y'all don't like that. You apparently don't like calm and peaceful. And you really rejoice in mortals and what they have to offer, and the sanctuary that they're claiming to give you, and the promises that they make to you, and the strength that seems apparent to you. That's what you rejoice in. And which is, again, it's that same thing that Isaiah repeats over and over again, that when we align with things of the world, or with things that are temporary, or things that are mortal and finite, then the results will be we get something mortal and finite. Rather than relying on our God, who is eternal and a God of miracles and a God of power, and who can protect us if we have that faith. But no, they want something in their hand. They want something tangible. They want something that they can look at. Move this altar out of the way and put this altar there. Let's offer to this God because I'm guaranteed results in less than 30 days, or whatever. People want tangible results. They don't like to wait, and they don't like to put their trust in anything that their physical body cannot verify. Sort of like, Isaiah said, here, look at the scroll. Am I right? Am I right? He wanted 2 witnesses to verify. Well, for mortals, our witnesses are our senses, and we rely an awful lot on our physical senses. And the world is set up in such a way so that our senses are constantly bombarded. We have the TV on, we have the radio on. We rely entirely on our physical senses for information and for confirmation. And we rarely want anything soft or quiet, or somewhere we have to go internal, we have to go to prayer, where we have to wait for an answer, where we have to decipher our impressions. Mortals, for the most part, don't like to do that, because really largely it requires being on your own to a large degree. You're quiet, you're withdrawn, you're going inside, you are relying on opening up channels of communication that you're not used to relying on. And so because of that, because we don't like to go softly, why then the Lord says in verse 7, fine, I'm going to give you loud and strong. And this king of Assyria, he compares him to a flood that is flowing over all his banks. Assyria surrounded not only Syria or Aram, but also the northern and southern kingdoms. They were surrounded. And he's saying he's going over all his banks. And you want waters? You want big waters? Okay, you want a lot of noise. You want to see, power? Here you go. Verse 8, and he shall pass through Judah. He shall overflow and go over. And go over. He shall reach even to the neck, and the stretching out of his wings shall fill the breadth of thy land, O Emmanuel. So God with us, remember Emmanuel, God with us, because they are the house of David, and which is the house through which the Messiah will be born. So he's saying, yeah, he's going to come close. It's going to feel pretty awful. I mean, if a flood is so high that it's up to your neck, and you have something circling over your head that's covering the whole breadth of your land. I mean, get that image. You feel like you're about to drown, and then there's this vulture, this massive bird of prey whose wingspan goes from, one end of your border to the other. Imagine that feeling. And that's the feeling really many people have, that they're up to their necks, and that hovering over them is something just ready to crush them as well. And that's what it can feel like to be a conquered people, regardless of the quote unquote freedoms that they say that you actually have. No, in fact, in many ways, even though he's saying, yeah, you're going to almost go down and it's going to look really bad, but it's not going to happen. You're going to pull through here, Judah. Not Israel, not the northern kingdom. Yeah, their time, their time's up. Tapping out, they're going out before you. So, that feeling really should be one that a lot of people today can relate to, is feeling oppression. You're feeling oppressed on the land. You're feeling it from all sides, above, below, all around you is just oppression. And you're just trying to survive. Keep your head above water, as the saying goes, treading water just to survive. And verse 9 says, associate yourselves, O ye people. So he's speaking to the people. And you shall be broken in pieces. So he's saying, if you want to align yourselves with people and mortals and kingdoms and ways and philosophies and mortal leaders and all that, ye shall be broken in pieces. And give ear, all ye of far countries. So for some reason, he's asking those of distant lands to listen. And I'm not sure why, because he's addressing the people of Israel here, the northern and the southern kingdoms, really. And gird yourselves, in other words, prepare for war, be fighters, get ready, and ye shall be broken in pieces. Gird yourselves, and ye shall be broken in pieces. So anytime there is repetition in the scriptures, I always go back and read it again, because I love Gertrude Stein. She said, there is no such thing as repetition. There isn't. This isn't a repetition. This is insistence. The prophet is insisting on this point right here. Broken in pieces, broken in pieces, broken in pieces. 3 times. Gird yourselves 2 times. So he's saying the more that you try to fight and create alliances and try to solve problems, and in your own way with your limited vision and your limited toolbox, chances are you're going to be broken in pieces. Now remember, Isaiah speaks a lot about being holy, holy having derived from the word whole. God has made you whole. Only God can make you whole. Only God can rescue you from certain and imminent destruction. And so he's saying this is the opposite of being holy, which is you're going to be in pieces. You're not going to be whole. You're not going to be made whole. You're going to be broken in pieces as long as you continue to try to do things in a way that mortals solve their problems, which is, as we've seen through the history of the world, is through wars, through fighting, through lying, through making secret combinations, through a very small majority controlling the vast majority, small minority controlling the vast majority of resources. And we just go ahead and trust that, and we rely on that, not realizing that we're up to our necks in a flood, and we have birds of prey so big shadowing over us. You will be broken in pieces. He can't have said that any more times. 3 times in one verse pretty much is driving the point home. But that is the message. It's sort of like when Moses approached the bush, he was on his journey to become a holy person. Till, like I said last week, the Lord could bury him. It said that, Moses was buried by the hand of the Lord to the point he could jump into the Lord's arms. At first, the Lord was, oh, don't come so close. Let's start slow. So let's build up. And then by the time Moses was ready to cross over, catch me, Lord. And so this is the opposite of that journey, of Moses's journey to become a holy, sanctified person. This is the opposite. These are people moving farther and farther away and becoming less and less holy and more broken. Verse 10, take counsel together and it shall come to naught. In other words, all your mortal plans, they're gonna just crumble. Everything's gonna fall apart. Everything that a man can make pretty much is going to come to naught, which means it's just going to crumble. You think of the great things that were built thousands of years ago and now they're just in ruins. You know, what seemed like it was going to last forever, now it's just a shadow of what it was before. Speak the word and it shall not stand. So whatever you say and whatever your plans, they're really not going to last. What lasts is, it says here, for God is with us. And it's so beautiful because if you go to verse 8, he describes, he shall pass over even to the neck. He feel the breath of that land. Oh, Emmanuel. So he's talking about the house of Judah. Oh, Emmanuel, which means God with us. And then in verse 10, he really ends it the same way. Shall speak the word and it shall not stand. For God is with us. Emmanuel. He's saying the same thing. Emmanuel, God with us. So in other words, all the things that seem to combine against this house of Judah, or really anyone who's listening and to the Lord and following that path of holiness toward him, regardless of, you know, neck up to your neck in water. You know, that journey is the journey of Emmanuel. The God is with us. And it doesn't mean that you will always escape any kind of hardship or you'll never be under any kind of attack. Absolutely not. But you will have that confidence that God is with us. For the Lord spake thus to me with a strong hand. So now Isaiah, there's a little bit of a shift. He's saying, now this is what God said to me. So and this is a hard one for a lot of pastors and a lot of church leaders. They don't like it when people say, you know what, God impressed me that I should do this. You know, should every prophet, for example, name their child Shir Jashub and Maher-shalal-Hashbaz? No, absolutely not. Sometimes we get individual commandments that apply to us alone. And so what's going to follow is something that Isaiah needed to hear specifically. And a lot of people in clergy are the first to say, no, God doesn't talk to you. Come on, you know, which is so awful because God does talk to us as individuals. If we are his children, as we are taught very thoroughly, and he is our father, there is no reason we need anybody to be a go-between between a father and a child. And we cannot judge each other's paths to wisdom and to righteousness and to finding God. We don't know what path someone needs to take to have that experience to wisdom and to understand that. Some people will be prompted to do things that make no sense to us at all. And too often when I say we, you know, people that think they know better for some other individual, you know, could be a leader, it could be a parent, it could be a friend. Very often we act no better than Satan, who thought that he had a great plan for our lives and he was going to guarantee we wouldn't suffer, and he was going to guarantee, oh no one's going to make a mistake. And so it's really hard for us not only to trust God, but to trust each other and just to trust the whole process of mortality, that there is risk, that there is pain, that there is suffering. But sometimes that is the only way some of us can learn, is the hard way. Is the hard way. But is it better to pass through the hard way and learn than not learn at all, which is really Satan's plan? And too often, you know, leaders condemn people in ways that they shouldn't, because their idea is like, no, you shouldn't do that. You should never do that. You should do this way, the way that, you know, Johnny Be Good over here does it, you know, and Sally Make No Mistakes does it. And they're very quick to condemn individual pathways, not trusting God, who really is like a great GPS. Okay, you missed that turn there. Okay, in 500 feet, make a U-turn. It's like he's constantly guiding our path. Yes, do we miss turns? Do we make the wrong step? Do we do this? Yes, but is that great guide in the sky constantly still trying to direct us in a way that we need to go? Yes. And too often, so many of us do not have trust that, people can learn from their mistakes. If it were up to the vast majority of bishops and leaders and priests and pastors, the prodigal son would have never received his inheritance, and he would have never been allowed to go on that journey, ever. And he would have never found God. That's what happens when we're in charge. When we think we know better, and we think, well, I'm going to tell you how to find God, and I'm going to tell you what you need to experience in order to, experience the divine. This is what happens when mortals get in charge and they try to oppress people and dominate people to such a degree that they are determining how each individual path to wisdom. And so what people should be asking is, just like Eve, is there no other way? Is there no other way for me to gain this knowledge without passing through these things? What do you want to know? I want to know this, that, and the other, and I want to, find out for myself. Okay, but is there no other way for you to do this but to, take that road? Respecting a person's agency is why we came, why we're born. It is our greatest gift. And if we constantly crush a person's soul to such a degree that they can't even trust their own agency and their own heart, we're no better than the adversary. We are no better than the adversary. So back to, so again, he speaks to Isaiah with a strong hand and instructed me that I should not walk in the way of this people. So, first of all, that strong hand. I love how he says, the Lord spake to me with strong, it's like, listen here. What is this? Lord's normally like, da, 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 I'm telling you this, but now he's like, okay, Isaiah, don't walk in the way of these people. And that is something, again, that really needs a strong hand to tell us, quit looking all around you to find the way. Your soul wanted more than anything to gain knowledge, have a body. You are a child of God. You are born with that light of Christ. This is the spark of the divine. You were created by God. You cannot, no matter how hard you try in this life, no matter what you do to deny it, whatever you do to try to educate yourself out of it, this will not go away. It won't go away. That divine spark and that eternal thread that was there before you were born, that continues to be there throughout your life, and that will be either awfully or wonderfully apparent when you cross to the other side. You cannot lose that. And that's why so many people who don't believe and who are atheists are so angry. They rage because there is something, no matter how great an argument, no matter how much information, no matter how hard they try, there is that eternal thread in our being that you cannot wash away, educate away, wish away. It will not go away. It will not go away. And it will remain within you. Regardless of what you believe or you don't believe, there will be no getting around it. So that to rely on that, of course, is hard because, like I said, humans want, they want tangible physical proof. whatever inkling they can't get around, nevertheless, they'd rather rely on, whatever they have in their hand or whatever they can see with their eyes. And so the Lord constantly has to tell us, look, there is a lot of social pressure out there. There's a lot of people that are telling you this, that, and the other. It makes a lot of sense to your physical mind and to your mortal being, but I cannot tell you enough. Isaiah, do not walk in the ways of these people. Don't do it. Don't do it. And he goes on to say, verse 12, say ye not, in other words, Isaiah, don't say this, a confederacy to all to whom this people shall say a confederacy, neither fear ye their fear, nor be afraid. So he's telling Isaiah, do not be afraid. And also here he says a confederacy to all to whom this people shall say a confederacy. So at this time, there were a lot of alliances, as we know. We saw Syria try to, or rather Israel tried to align with Syria, said, let's gang up on the southern kingdom, because we're going to need a buffer zone against, there was a lot of intrigue and, power behind, closed doors type of thing. And they wanted to install their own king. But nevertheless, the Lord is saying, so first of all, it's not like the Lord is saying there are no conspiracies or there are no confederacies or there are no alliances, there are no secret combinations. That's not what the Lord is saying. He's basically saying, yes, but don't be a bandwagoner, okay? Don't get on that fear bandwagon and start freaking out, okay? Don't fear their fear. Your fear should be different than the fear of the world. Don't fear their fear. So, and this is similar in 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 14, he says, but, and if ye suffer for righteous sake, happy are ye, and be not afraid of their terror, neither be troubled. So, and this is, I think, really hard for a lot of people to understand, because when they, when they're up to their neck, and what feels like floodwaters, and there's vultures circling over their head, it's really hard to not feel afraid and to not be afraid. But the Lord is saying, quit buying into that whole culture of fear. Quit it. Because when you're afraid, again, I can't emphasize this enough, fear turns your higher ability to think and to process higher thought. Your prefrontal cortex just shuts down. You become an animal. Fear turns people into brute beasts. And when you're a brute beast, you can be led around like by a ring on your nose, whatever that is. Is it anger? Oh, we're outraged at this. Is it, greed? Oh, here, you need this latest car. You need this. You got to keep up with the Joneses. Whatever it is. Fear turns people into idiots, controllable, easily to manipulate idiots. And so God is saying, quit it. Quit buying into this culture of fear. Stop it. And he's using that heavy hand, okay? 13, sanctify the Lord of hosts himself. And let him be your fear, and let him be your dread. So a couple things here. So sanctify and sanctuary, we're going to see the word sanctuary here in a little bit. Both have the same root word, which is sanct, which means holy. Again, the Lord alone is the source of our wholeness or our holiness. And he's the only way for us to truly become whole. Because like I said, we all have, since we are created by God and we have that spark of the divine, the light of Christ, whatever you want to call it, unless we acknowledge and embrace and adhere to that part of our being that is eternal, we will not be whole. We will be broken. We will be broken people. It is through our relationship with God that we become whole and and holy. And there is no other way. There's no other way, no matter what we try to do, for us to become whole, complete beings. We must acknowledge that part of us that is just as much a part of us as our physical being, our spiritual being is there. And so without that, we will be broken in pieces. But also it says, let him be your fear. Now, this is the opposite. For example, in 1 John chapter 4, verse 18, there is no fear in love, it says, but perfect love casteth out fear, because fear hath torment. Yes, he that feareth is not made perfect in love. So this sort of contradicts what we read. Also in Moroni in the Book of Mormon, chapter 8, verse 16, he says, and I fear not what man can do, for perfect love casteth out all fear. So fear and love, they cannot reside. So then you're saying, well, then why is God asking us to fear him? But it's more like, be afraid of what your life will be like as you walk away from that burning bush, as you leave that relationship. That is what we should fear. Fearing the consequence of losing the relationship with God. Fearing what will happen when we no longer have that guidance and that sanctuary and that comfort and that direction. That is what we should fear. But the Lord is, in the next one, verse 14, and he shall be for a sanctuary. You cannot be afraid in a sanctuary. It's not a sanctuary then. If you're like, I'm so afraid of God, that's not a sanctuary. You cannot have peace in fear. You can't do it. Physiologically, it is not possible. It's not possible because when you're in a high stress situation, your body responds, for example, and like I said, your prefrontal cortex shuts down. You can't even process higher thoughts. You become as a brute beast. Your body responds, your blood pressure rises, your cortisol, your body starts to produce cortisol. You start to retain fat in places you don't want to have fat. All sorts of things start to go awry in a body that is full of fear. So I promise you, God does not want you to live in that state. He does not ask you to live in a state that is not good for your mind, your heart, your body, or your soul. So you wish that the prophets had said this in a different way. Fear the consequences of moving away from him. Fear what your life would be like without God. Fear what it's like when you listen to only mortals who know only mortal things. That is what we should fear. But God is our sanctuary, and in a sanctuary there is no fear. He shall be a sanctuary for those who believe and those who are approaching, making that journey toward the burning bush. That is the sanctuary. But for a stone of stumbling and for a rock of offense to all others. As I said before, this is something the Creator cannot easily be got around. And I personally believe that as science starts to actually know a thing or two, it's going to become more and more apparent that all our theories are not holding up our atheistic view of God, and that in fact, a divine creator is going to become more and more apparent. And that is going to frustrate a lot of people because it's going to be a huge stumbling block for them and a rock of offense. It's going to offend them because, for example, many of the world leaders, they don't want to have people be more obedient to their God than to world leaders. They don't want that because it threatens their power over you, and they want to have total control. Especially, we've seen this in the past few years. They do want to control your body. That you can't, as much as they'll say, "Hey, my choice, my body." Yeah, except for when it comes to other things, to certain things. So they want to have complete control, not only over your body but over your mind. And they want to determine what you believe. And they call religion superstition and caveman talk and all the rest because the belief that you are a child of God and that you have a right to your own opinions and to your own autonomy and all that, that threatens their power. So it is a rock of offense and a stone stumbling. And it's also a stone of stumbling for them because in a rock of offense, because they can't get around it in themselves, no matter how hard they try. So for a rock of offense to both the houses of Israel, for a gin and a snare to the inhabitants of Jerusalem. Now, a gin and a snare was something that they used to entangle little birds. It didn't kill them, but they just couldn't fly away. So, it just trapped them. It's something where, yeah, you can be alive. Sure. Here's some food and water or whatever, but you're not free. You are not free. And many among them shall stumble and fall and be broken. Here we have the word broken a fourth time, and be snared and be taken. Not all. It says, but many. Okay. It doesn't say all of them, but not all. And just remember, for those who don't believe, sometimes all it takes is them falling and hitting bottom, like as we see in the parable of the prodigal son, where he's like, wait, what am I doing? I'm sitting here, eating with pigs when I could be having it so much better. Sometimes that stumbling is not, it's not that God wants you, oh, here, stumble and fall, I'm shoving you down. It's like, maybe by you stumbling here, maybe something will click and maybe you'll realize, hey, God isn't so bad after all. Or my father isn't so bad after all. And maybe it isn't the final objective, the stumbling. And maybe it's there to help get you up on the right path again, or to begin on the right path. Bind up the testimony, seal the law among my disciples. So he's going to seal this up. And you wonder, because sometimes, like in this verse also, the Lord will say, I hid my face. But did he really hide his face? It's not like God's like, okay, I'm going to go over here so you can't find me. No, it's because, as Isaiah was told, you're going to preach to people who are, whatever you say, it's going to make them not hear. It's going to make them not see. They're just going to be awful people to deal with. But this is the same idea, except for those who are disciples, except for seal the law among my disciples. So those who are disciples, those who believe, they're still going to get the law. They're still going to enjoy God's presence. They're still going to have that in their life. As the Book of Mormon so beautifully teaches, that prosperity, or to succeed, however you want to put it, in life is to enjoy God's presence in your life. And the opposite of that is to lose his presence in your life. And that's what it means to falter, to stumble, to be conquered, all those things. That is when we stop enjoying his presence in our life. That's when we're no longer prospering in the land. But again, Isaiah always emphasizes, however, yes, you could be here, and here, but you will still have that success, that prosperity in as long as you are adhering to and approaching that bush and trying to have that relationship with God. 18, for behold, and the other thing it says, 17, sorry. And I will wait upon the Lord. Ooh, that was almost, I wouldn't want to skip that one. That hideth his face from the house of Jacob, and I will look for him. So let's just say, and I will wait upon the Lord, and I will look for him. And I love that because Isaiah's, you kind of get at the point, he's taking his big Megillah, he's wrapping it all up, and he's like, okay, I'm just going to go home, I'm going to wait, and I'm going to look for him. I've said all I've had to say. All I can say to a people to whom God's face is hidden. And it's not hidden, like I said, because, that he's doing this that he's doing this, it's because the people are doing this. As we see in 2 Nephi chapter 16:10, which is in Isaiah 6, make the heart of this people fat and make their ears heavy and shut their eyes, lest they see with their eyes and hear with their ears and understand with their heart and be converted and healed. So in other words, he's saying, when you preach to them, you're not going to get through, because you're not saying things to them that they want to hear, and you're not showing them things that they want to see, and you're not offering things to them that they want to feel. They don't want your soft little waters. They don't want your gentle waters, like the prophet Elijah, when there was thunder, there was earthquake, no, it was in a soft voice. They don't respond to soft voices. These people want heavy hands. They want strong waters. They want impressive displays of power. But the thing that is so beautiful is that, yes, there are times apparently in history when the people are so dense spiritually that the prophet can't really share an awful lot. It's not like he doesn't. It's just that the unbelief in the general population is so great. It's as though he hasn't shared anything. So to wait upon the Lord, what does that mean? It means that we carry on in faith. It means that we proceed as usual. We carry on with all the things we do, whether it's times of war, times of scarcity or abundance, whatever it is, we carry on as usual in faith, having our sanctuary in the Lord, and we live by that daily personal revelation, the way that the Lord spoke to Isaiah. And Isaiah, listen to me. I'm telling you with a heavy hand, don't do this and don't say this. And so we need to have that personal revelation, just like again, that story of Moses, when he approached the burning bush, what did the Lord say? Moses. He was on a first name basis with Moses. And that is so powerful. It's so powerful to hear the Lord call people Samuel, to call people by their first names. He knows your name. He speaks to you not only personally, but specifically. And that's what it means to wait on the Lord from moment to moment. You are waiting for that personal revelation. And until, in that relationship, until our expectations, because when we're waiting, you get that sense of expectation. What am I waiting for? What's going to happen? And at first, in that process of discipleship, all our expectations are our own. They're what we want. And, like, Lord, why can't I have it now? Why can't you make this better now? Why can't you heal that person? And why can't you soften that person's heart? And, we want everything now. But as we learn to wait upon the Lord, that is a growing process for us, because sooner or later, our expectations become his expectations, or our will basically becomes surrendered to his will as we look to God and we wait upon him. And that's what it means. It's a process of refinement, the refinement of our mortal beings who see so little and really feel so little on the scale of the infinite. And so when we wait upon the Lord, even though things like in Isaiah's world right now for him are so, they're not looking good. He gave us the image of, water up to flood water to here, and, a shadow of destruction overhead. What a horrific image, waiting in flood water in the shadows, But he's saying, as we wait upon the Lord, that is our sanctuary. That is our sanctuary, to wait upon the Lord. Verse 18, behold, I and the children whom the Lord hath given me are for signs and for wonders in Israel from the Lord of hosts, which dwelleth in Zion. So, it's easy just to say, okay, well, he's talking about here only about Shir Jashub, Maher Shalal Hashbaz. 40 syllables later. It's easy to say, oh, well, it's just his two sons. No, you have to remember Isaiah, speaks, yes, from the now, but he speaks into eternity. He speaks into the generations. He's not just speaking of his situation alone. Otherwise, what good as a prophet would he be? What he says applies to us, obviously. So we are supposed to be for the signs and the wonders. Those who are disciples of Christ, they're supposed to be the great role, the big Megillah, the message, the scripture of love from God to the people around them who cannot hear and cannot see and cannot feel. Though the children or the disciples are supposed to be that message to God's children around them. And that's what makes them signs and wonders. That's the people who are the signs and wonders. It's just like when Christ in his ministry, he'd go through a big group of people and go, that one right there, let's go see what he has to say. Does he want to be healed? So God's power or Christ's power was in finding the one that could be the sign and wonder, the one that could manifest that message of love and hope. And that's what followers are supposed to be. They're supposed to be that role, that Megillah, that scroll, that message, that scripture from God to all his children of love and hope, even in floodwaters and in dark shadows. There also reminds you of the scripture in John 18, verse 9, where he says that the saying might be fulfilled, which he spake of them, which thou gavest me, have I lost none. Those that were given to God, these are the ones that are supposed to be for signs and wonders. Verse 19, and when they shall say unto you, seek unto you that have familiar spirits, and unto wizards that peep and mutter, should not a people seek unto their God for the living to hear from the dead? So this is, again, we've talked about this before in one of my earlier videos, that when people are people sometimes they're like, God, I don't want to talk. God, I don't want to hear from him because then that means I have to go to church. I have to read the scriptures. No, let me just go, call 1-800-psychic here. Get the lowdown, but it's interesting because he's saying, okay, well then you're just going to get peeping and muttering. That's the best they can do. They're going to give you bits and pieces, not very clear communication. It's not going to be really what you need and what you want and what you hunger for. It's still going to leave you spiritually hungry. And he's asking a very good question. If you really want, if you want to hear from the dead, shouldn't you go to God? Because, so he's saying, in times when we're confused and we feel overwhelmed, obviously we're looking for answers, but he's saying, don't look for them from mortals. Look for them from God. But he's saying also, let's look at 1 John chapter 4, verse 1. He's saying, beloved, believe not every spirit, but try the spirits, whether they are of God, because many false prophets are gone out into the world. And so he's saying it doesn't mean that no one ever, this person says they're a psychic, therefore everything they say is of the devil. That's not true. And Christians so often just want to condemn everybody to hell. Everybody. Oh, you're psychic, you're evil, you're going to hell. It's just not true. You cannot just with a blanket thing condemn everybody. If you want to know if something's true or not, test it with the spirit. If it's just a peeping and muttering, you can pretty much dismiss it. But if a psychic is telling you, like we heard with the when the prophet Samuel was called up and she had the skill, why she had the skill, why she had this gift, we don't know. We don't know why some people have certain gifts and skills, but it seemed to me like she wanted to be righteous about it. And she was really upset that Saul had her call up, the prophet. And then she very much wanted him to leave after he got what he wanted. So it is unfair for us to just blanket say, oh, they're all of the devil. These are all people working with the demon. No, because we're told we can test spirits ourselves. And how do we know? To the law and to the testimony, and if they speak not according to this word, it is because there is no light in them. If they do not confirm the truth and they do not confirm love, then you know that this is because that they are, if it contradicts the light of Christ and it contradicts the gospel of Christ, then you know that they're wrong and they're not a force of good. But we're given that light of Christ that allows us to discern. And it is a sin, which is Christians are very often guilty of automatically saying you're all evil, because remember, the way you judge is going to be how you're going to be judged again. So be mindful, take that seriously, and stop condemning everybody to hell. Because very often, guess what? What goes around comes around. Verse 21, and they shall pass through it hardly bestead and hungry. And it shall come to pass that when they shall be hungry, they shall fret themselves and curse their king and their God and look upward. These people are going to be like, have nowhere to go and nowhere to look when you rely entirely on things that are not of the Spirit and not of God. Hunger is very often a sign of spiritual starvation, spiritual famine. You're not going to have anywhere to turn if you're looking to peeping and muttering for answers. You need solid answers. The light, again, is the metaphor for revealing truth and making it clear. And darkness is anything that obscures and makes things confusing. And so darkness is going to leave you hungry. Peeping and muttering will leave you hungry and in darkness. Verse 22, and this reiterates this, and they shall look unto the earth and behold trouble and darkness, dimness of anguish, and shall be driven to darkness. Again, when you are relying on sources other than God for your truth and for your information and for your direction, you're going to look all around you in the earth, and what are you going to see? You're going to see nothing but trouble. You're going to see nothing but darkness. You're going to see nothing but dimness of anguish, and you're going to be driven to darkness instead of to the light. So that is why it is so important to turn to God, to have that relationship of approaching the burning bush, to have that relationship of prayer and humility and surrender and trust. Trust is the key word of our relationship. I mean, how much do you have to trust the Lord if you're this high and, when you feel like you are all but drowning? That trust that you will be preserved, that trust will be your strength. It will be your survival. So he's saying those who don't have God will look like this. But those who do have God, they can look at the earth and they won't see trouble. They won't see darkness. They can see sin and they can see faltering and they can see falling and stumbling and all those other things. But they are still going to have light and they are still going to have truth. And they are still going to have a measure of abundance because your relationship with God is abundance. That is prosperity. That is the success that we want in this life, regardless of what is taking place all around us. Does it mean that we will never experience hardship, where we feel like, oh, I'm going under? Even bringing up Elijah again, when he sat under that juniper tree, he's like, just take me out, God. I'm done. I'm no better than my fathers. I'm done with this. And, an angel said, come on, eat. He got up and he ate. And then guess what he did? He went right back down and laid back. We all have our limits. Don't be ashamed in any way to rest like Elijah did. Take a break. Many of us are like we're treading in flood water and we have shadows circling over our head. Take care of yourself. Rest. Find that sanctuary in your Savior, in your Heavenly Father, through prayer, through scripture study, through service. Find that sanctuary because that will feed your soul and you will not leave you hungry looking around and seeing nothing but darkness on the land and dimness. So Isaiah is so pertinent to us today, very pertinent. And I just want to remind you that this is a message to you and to me and to all those who are children of God, whether we want to receive it or not. It is to us that we don't have to tread in flood waters and that we can find our sanctuary in light and in abundance, regardless of the circumstances of our world. And I just hope that you are worshiping in a place that acknowledges your personal relationship with God and that the fact that you can be directed on your own path to learn wisdom and to approach that burning bush so that you can become more holy and more whole through your relationship with God. And I'll talk to you again soon.